Across the country, the state of Britain's schools is frightening teachers, parents and children.
They go deep down till they find a rocky cleft where they find...
Tonight we look at what is happening by telling the story of one family caught up in what has become for them the crisis of British education.
The suckers on the tentacles hold it up there. And then with two tentacles left...
The youngest in the family is 12-year-old Danny Hayday.
What I think is, what grades am I going to get? Well, I'm not really all that clever. That's what I'm worried about at the moment.
Danny's family is frightened that he might follow the example of his elder sister, Sarah, who left school earlier this year, describing herself as a failure with, she says, 1 GCSE.
I was upset, but very frustrated, because all the work I put in, I had nothing to show for it at all. Nothing at all.
The children's mother, Shirley Hayday, sells jewellery in Alder's department store in Basildon.
I think I'm not only worried about Danny, I'm worried about all the other children in his school.
It's a fear shared by her husband, London taxi driver John Hayday.
It's so disappointing if Sarah's in such a state with her exam results. My poor Danny, who's nowhere near as bright as she is, how's he going to do? Now, you can imagine, we're really worried about him with going through the education system.
Tonight, in the first of 2 special programmes on British schools, World in Action looks at what lies behind the teacher shortage. Nothing less, according to some, than a system which fails most of our children most of the time. The Hayday family, as their friends say, is a model family, not only happy together and good-looking, but quite well off. Indeed, an agency has asked the family to model for them. Like families all over Britain, they want their children to do better than they did, but fear they may not. Because in Britain, even fortunate families like the Haydays are worried at what they see happening to their children in our schools.
Well, if you take our school, for instance, we've got a new headmaster, and he's a very, very good headmaster. I mean, no bones about it. He's doing a good job there. But we've lost, in the last 2 years, we must have lost half of our teachers.
The school the Haydays have sent their children to, Chalverdon School in Basildon, is one of the best local schools in Essex. Under its new headmaster, Alan Roach, it's providing rigorous academic education while trying to get the best out of all its pupils.
Please be seated.
Locally, the school's reputation is growing all the time.
Perhaps what is more important than what I feel about your behaviour is what is felt by our local community about you.
Danny is lucky to be at Chalverdon. It's the sort of school good young teachers want to come to. Yet even here they lost 22 teachers last term and almost as many the year before. Although only a symptom of a bigger crisis, the teacher shortage is causing Headmaster Alan Roach serious problems.
It means an enormous expenditure of time, and if I can give you an example of that, that I spent 5 of the 6 weeks of my summer holiday in school interviewing and recruiting teachers. I always feel satisfied as we approach the start of a term that I've managed to fill those posts, but I've become worried, increasingly worried, term by term, as I find that the problem persists.
Because Alan Roach worked so hard last summer, Chalverdon started the year with only 1 staffing problem. But every such problem damages children, even in schools like this one.
Das ist das Flugzeug. Noch einmal, das ist...
Norman Humphreys, a senior master, is coping with the problem at Chalverdon, as other teachers are coping with similar problems all over Britain. He's helping out by taking a few German lessons. The problem is, he doesn't speak German.
Das ist der Wagen.
No, I'm not qualified as a German teacher at all, or a French teacher for that matter. I did quite a lot of reading during the summer holiday, and I suppose I know enough French and German to know more than most of the children do.
Chalverdon could have appointed a languages teacher by now, but felt none of the applicants were experienced enough. While they go on looking, Norman has to do his best, but no one suggests it's ideal.
No, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest. I'm enjoying what I'm doing very much at the moment, and the children that I'm teaching are being very responsive. But I wouldn't want my children taught modern languages by me. I would want them taught by a specialist.
Chalverdon is lucky. It only has 1 subject being taught by an unqualified teacher. Elsewhere, the position is much worse.
Alan notices that the 30 row in the
In another school just down the road from Chalverdon, 5 teachers are teaching subjects in which they're not qualified. One of them, temporary teacher Nikki Dawson, is taking mathematics, religious education, geography, history and English. And yet she's not even a trained teacher.
I did want to train as a teacher, but was told I couldn't because I don't have O-level maths.
So you're teaching maths with no O-level maths?
Yes, that's right.
Does that worry you?
To some extent, because again, I'm trying to keep one step in front of the children.
Besides teaching in this school, Nikki also helps out in yet another local school. And there she teaches 5th-year biology to pupils about to take their GCSE.
Did you manage to find your missing numbers?
I think that's a big concern because I'm not trained as a science teacher. I can't tell whether I'm giving them the right information that they need to pass their exam.
In some cases, they're actually referring to textbooks to actually teach us. And obviously, if they don't know what they're teaching, in 2 years, how are we going to learn the subject and pass the exam?
We wouldn't be natural parents if we was not worried about our children's education in this country at the moment.
At Manchester University, they found the teacher shortage, although worse in the south, is now a national problem, with perhaps 1 in 3 maths teachers and nearly half of all physics teachers not properly qualified.
People take comfort from the fact that it's not much worse this year than it was last year. But we have to realise that there's been a progressive decline. The gap between the actual demand for teachers in certain subject areas, in mathematics, physics, modern languages, and the actual supply is increasing.
At Manchester, they believe it possible that by the 90s, subjects like physics or chemistry, which will each need about 11,000 teachers, may each be 4,000 or 5,000 short, something which comes as no surprise to Chalverdon's headmaster, Alan Roach.
The problem appears to be becoming more acute. The gaps are across the board. I find problems in recruiting teachers now across the curriculum. There was a time when maths teachers were in short supply, and that was the problem. But now the problem is across the board, across the curriculum, and in all subject areas.
In the Chalverdon staff room, morale is not a problem. But even here, staff understand only too well the reason for the teacher shortage. Research shows that few well-qualified people now want to train as teachers, and of those who do, 40% will leave within 5 years. The reason for this is clear. Teaching has become a very unhappy profession.
I usually get a very bad reaction when I tell people I'm a teacher, especially if I go for a drink in a bar. Usually, I try not looking like a teacher at all, especially if I come straight from school. If they find out I'm a teacher, I usually end up with them hurling abuse at me. If I don't get a violent reaction, I usually get comments like, "Oh, I've got a much better job. I can earn 15 grand next week. Come and work for me. What do you want to be a teacher for? It's low pay."
I have to struggle to pay my mortgage, and I can't think about getting married yet. It's just very, very difficult to survive in this area of the country in particular on my teaching wage.
Many people would not value teaching as a profession. Perhaps they feel that we don't do a good job and we're not regarded as valuable members in society, perhaps.
In recent weeks, I've tried to get out of teaching by looking for jobs elsewhere.
There have been surveys which suggest that up to about 1/3 of teachers would actually like to leave, but they're trapped there. They have a mortgage, they have a family, they don't have skills which are usable elsewhere.
The unhappiness is such that those who do have the skills to leave are increasingly doing so. In this training department at the Norwich Union, 7 out of the 9 instructors are former teachers.
If I was to prepare an hour's teaching here, I would have 25 hours of preparation time. If I was in teaching, for that hour teaching, I'd be lucky if I had 25 minutes. There's the difference. You have the time, the resource of time, you have a pleasant working environment. There's just no comparison.
Research has shown that with low pay, the first important reason for the unhappiness of teachers is the underfunding of our schools. At Chalverdon, money is now being spent, but everywhere there are signs of years of financial neglect, during which the school and its teachers were starved of cash. Most teachers will accept low pay because they enjoy teaching, but the penny pinching and squalor of recent years has taken away much of the attraction.
We demand high standards of appearance, high standards of work and behaviour from our children. We ask a lot of them and they give it to us. And then we have this ridiculous and incongruous situation of giving out books that are that anybody would be ashamed to give out. They have no backs to them, there is some writing on them, and pages are torn. They show the general wear and tear of books that have been used by a number of classes over a number of years.
They're not really nice to read, and if they're really badly no cover, you have to say, "Sir, is this the right book to him?" because it hasn't got a cover on it. Where it's been used so much, the cover's been ripped off.
The lavatory's been here since the school was built. You can see that the sanitary ware is very old. It looks dirty, but it's not. Our cleaners, our caretaker, work very hard, but we are working with things that are really very old. They will be replaced. But that always takes time. Some of our children will have spent their whole time in this school with this sort of equipment.
When you go to work in a dump, you don't want to go. It's a natural reaction. You think, oh, I don't want to go down to that pigsty today. I mean, 2 years ago we had that terrible, terrible storm. Because the school was so worn down, it had a field day on our school. So now it's going to take 3 to 4 years for the school to get put back to how it should look, all because the work was not done in the first place.
Some extra money has been spent on education, but even the government admits it has not been enough to stop our schools deteriorating. In 1987, a Department of Education report admitted that more than £1 billion would be necessary to repair them. Another government report revealed that a quarter of schools had inadequate supplies of textbooks and that many school libraries had been neglected for years. Yet the present Secretary of State for Education, John McGregor, rejects such criticisms.
Wherever you look, there are always more things you'd like to do, not only in education elsewhere. And clearly I'm very keen on increasing the whole process of dealing with educational issues. In terms of buildings, the number of unsatisfactory sites, split schools and so on, has been considerably reduced. We've been dealing with the mobile classrooms, but of course, always there's more that can be done. And I could quote you surveys which, of the HMI which indicate and draw attention to all the improvements, which also draw attention to the fact that it isn't simply a matter of money, it's a matter of educational organisation.
Come in.
The government is trying to make schools more efficient, but the way it's doing it, research shows, is the second reason teachers are leaving. However much the daily routine may look the same, behind the scenes, schools are being transformed. The changes mostly stem from the Education Reform Act, which Kenneth Baker pushed through last year. They're intended to raise standards and give parents more say in the running of schools, and as such have been widely welcomed. Yet the way they're being introduced is criticised.
But they've all come at once, they haven't been properly resourced, and teachers feel overwhelmed by all the things that they are asked to do.
An enormous amount of paperwork has come our way over the last few months. If I can give you some examples of the initiatives that we're having to contend with. We have the national curriculum, which means that in every subject area there will have to be a huge input from staff. There are many other initiatives, for instance, records of achievement, the assessment of pupil progress, the collective act of worship, teacher appraisal, local management of schools, and of course, as you'll see, the Education Reform Act itself has resulted in an enormous amount of paperwork. All these initiatives will mean an input from every single teacher in this school.
The initiatives have introduced not only extra work, but near chaos, according to some.
Have you got F for France there? Under weather system, down towards the bottom.
This teacher at Chalverton is being assessed by one of his colleagues. They've spent a lot of time at the school developing ways of doing this as they were asked to. Now they've discovered they needn't have bothered. The initiative has been withdrawn. Similarly, after putting effort into finding new ways of assessing pupils, they find this initiative too appears to have been abandoned.
High pressure and what was it like this morning?
So what we want to get to is a value...
As some initiatives are abandoned, new ones arrive, some of which have shocked teachers at Chalverton, like the criteria they've been given for assessing pupils in the mathematics national curriculum.
The trouble is we've got hundreds of criteria we've got to consider for each child. There are so many that we're looking at that we find ourselves running around frantically ticking boxes instead of actually teaching the subject. And for 30 people in the class, that's almost impossible within a normal lesson.
What is it actually?
You're talking about 3,000 little boxes.
That's right, yes. It comes down to ticking boxes, which is a great shame because it's taken me away from being a teacher and more to being an assessor. Can do this, tick it.
And what does that mean to your workload?
Well, that's virtually doubled my workload. I mean, I don't mind working hard, but I think some of the jobs we've been asked to do now is actually impossible.
There's been a desire to shake up education. This is okay, perhaps for 1 or 2 initiatives at a time, but when you're thinking in terms of 8 or 10 all at once, it just doesn't work. Someone should have sorted out the priorities for these changes.
I think it's important to maintain those reforms, but I'm very sensitive to the fact that some teachers feel overwhelmed. So we're trying to reduce the rate of bump and the pressures to a rate that the system can absorb. And I think that will help with morale.
The workload on the teachers must be enormous. So if they've got that workload, how can they expect them? They just can't concentrate on everything at once. They want them to do everything, and they want them to work for nothing. To me, it is ridiculous. Of course, we're worried about our children's schools. It's an absolute joke at the moment.
Whatever the truth about the government's management of schools, research suggests the changes have only intensified teachers' unhappiness. It shows there may be a third and more important reason why teachers are leaving the profession. Nothing less than the failure of British education, which it is said sacrifices most children in favour of the few who go on to higher education.
I think many teachers are aware that the current education system that we have is failing our society badly. The bright people who move on to take A-levels and move to university are well served by the system. The teachers who teach them are generally very happy. The young people and the teachers are working together for the future success of the young people. But only 14% of young people leave school with the minimum qualifications to go on to university. And that includes people who've got 2 E's and who, in their own terms, perhaps think that they failed. The other 86% of young people are failed by the system, discarded by it. They have to find their own way through life, and they move on with a sense of failure.
It is this which lies at the heart of the Haydays nightmare. One child has been made to feel a failure, and they fear it could happen to the other.
I used to do my homework, do my schoolwork, did all my coursework and everything. And from my results, quite honestly, all the work I did was for nothing.
Well, I was devastated for her because she was so upset, because she seemed to have lost her confidence that morning.
Social Democrats, OK,
What happened to Sarah Hayday last year threatens these youngsters this year.
Yes.
Next spring they sit their GCSE examination. A few, nationally less than 30%, will do very well and be allowed to go on to A-levels and perhaps even university. The rest, the majority, will not. However well they do, they will see themselves as having failed the test, and their teachers know others will see them as failures too.
You're trapped in the system. You're presented with a GCSE, an examination structure, you work to it, you push the kids, you try to motivate them, you try to get their interest. You're telling them this is worthwhile, they go out there and they find it isn't.
Seeing the threat of failure, many youngsters come to reject school, making their failure total.
I think with GCSEs, because there's so much coursework to do, they're continuously working. And if, like, in the mock exams, they don't do very well, they don't see no point in carrying it on, so that might dishearten them a bit.
Going to a mock exam and only coming out with a D or an E, they go, oh, why should I continue with my coursework?
Why not? Isn't a D or E very useful?
Well, it's still a pass, but some people see, like, I'm a failure, I've got a D.
What marks am I going to get and what grades am I going to get? Because Sarah's like, well, I'm not really all that clever. Sarah's a bit better than me. She got them marks, and what am I going to get? That's what I'm worried about at the moment.
Young people sensing that they are not going to get anywhere at school respond rationally. They either don't go to school, and the Senior Chief Inspector has drawn attention to the high levels of truancy, 50% of some classes, Or if they go to school, they take it out on teachers as the nearest symbols of authority.
You get some people that don't want to learn and they disrupt the class, and that's if they haven't already decided. I mean, if they can't get any, you know, out of doing the work that way, they'll actually bunk off school.
That's right. I mean, if you go shopping over into Basildon, you go into the Eastgate Shopping Centre, which is a big place. All you see sitting round are children who should be at school and aren't, playing truant. Not at school.
And now I can actually see why children are actually truanting, because at the end of it, they're not having much to show. So is there really any point in us actually going to school, trying our hardest, because at the end of it, what have we got to show and where are we going to actually end up?
So many do give up that compared with other countries, British school results are appalling. Less than 30% get good GCSE grades in a range of subjects. In France, the equivalent figure may be as high as 80%. In Germany, 90%. Some experts now believe the majority of British youngsters leave school with an education more appropriate to the third world than Europe. It's this, some believe, which is really demoralising teachers. If youngsters can't succeed, nor can they.
We're in that system and we are doing our best, and I'm sure that every teacher is doing their best, but they are still caught in that system and they can't do any more than they're doing at the moment, and that's the problem.
If you've got a class full of children and they don't seem to be learning, and they're not getting the results at the end of it, they can't get that much job satisfaction. It's like myself, I sell jewellery. If I go into the store one day and don't sell anything, I think to myself, why am I there? So it must be the same for the teachers. If they're teaching and the children don't seem to be wanting to learn as well, what job satisfaction is there for them? They must go home at night feeling really fed up.
The teacher goes home, all he's got when he finishes at the end of the day is a headache. Trying to keep the rowdy ones quiet and also educate the ones who want to learn. When he goes home, he must be in turmoil.
The Department of Education disagrees. They say their reforms are beginning to make a difference.
What we're actually seeing is an improvement in standards. We're seeing an improvement, in a considerable improvement compared with 20 years ago, in the number of people who come out from the educational system with qualifications. For example, 20 years ago, only about 40% had no qualifications in terms of a certificate of any sort at all. Today that figure's down to 10%.
Yet the qualifications gained, as Sarah found, are often of little value. The number of those getting 5 or more good GCSEs is small and almost unchanged, as John McGregor admits when pressed.
I do agree. There is one of the areas where we have not been successful is we do not have enough people staying on in full-time education after 16 compared with the most successful other economies. We don't have the range of qualifications in some of the areas we talked about earlier, engineering, maths, science. We are not stretching enough of our people enough to ensure that they have the skills and qualifications to take them through what will be a highly competitive world. That's the whole thrust of the educational changes we're carrying through now.
As a school, Chalverdon is a good advert for the changes the government is making. At parents' evenings like this, the school goes out of its way to sell itself to local people and to gear itself to their needs. Academic children will do well here. It's exactly what the government hoped would happen. Yet few teachers at Chalverdon believe the government's reforms will do much to help the majority of their pupils, who leave here, as everywhere else, with so little. They see the new GCSE examination, although better than O-level, turning the majority into failures, just as before.
Basically, GCSE was brought in to stop the big divide, O-level, CSE. Has it really achieved that? I don't think so, because we still have the big divide.
At Chalverdon, too, there are fears the new national curriculum will also work against the majority of pupils who will be unable to master the numerous attainment levels being set.
I think the ordinary citizen is going to feel that they haven't achieved that much. It's going to be very useful, I think, for people going on to A-level and going on to the universities, but I don't think it's going to meet the needs of the less able or people going directly into industry.
Even at Chalverdon, it's feared, despite the reforms, most children will continue to leave with an education much of Europe would view as derisory.
I mean, we're very lucky. Our daughter has got lots and lots of confidence in herself, and she was able to go out and get her job on her own merits.
Well, in our heart of hearts, we know she'll be all right, because we know she's a bright, intelligent child. It's just that the exam results and the education system has failed her.
I mean,
She's not failed the education system, they've failed her. And I make it the English education system's fault.
After making tonight's programme, World in Action invited the Haydays to fly to Europe to see just how far Britain has fallen behind and to seek clues as to why it's happened.
I'm hoping to go to Europe, see the way they're taught, and if you come back here with the right ideas, just maybe, we might be able to do something about it.
What the Haydays discovered in schools all over Europe frightened and angered them. That's World in Action next Monday at 8:30.
Lovely. Danny, a bit closer into your mum. To me, nice smiles. Gotcha. And
The Haydays of Basildon. Dad is a London taxi driver. Mum sells jewellery in a department store.
Gotcha. One more.
For advertisers, a model British family, and as such they've helped promote household names. There is in fact only one shadow over this ideal British family: British education. They fear, as they told World in Action last week, that Danny may go the way of their daughter Sarah, who left school this summer describing herself as a failure with, she says, just one GCSE.
Beautiful.
When my daughter Sarah got her results, Danny said, what chance have I got? Because Sarah is one of the bright ones at the school. What chance have I got? If she can't get good results, what chance have I got? So we're really, really concerned.
Danny goes to a school that's becoming one of the best in Essex. But even here, some pupils, like most British young people, will enter adult life with an education more appropriate to the third world than Europe. As World in Action revealed last week, many believe this is because British youngsters and their teachers are victims of an education system which lags far behind the rest of Europe, and which, despite government reforms, will, they say, continue to fail most of our youngsters most of the time. Tonight, in the second of its two programmes on education, World in Action takes the Haydays to Europe to find out why youngsters there appear to be doing so much better than here.
We're really excited, we can't believe it. And we're really looking forward to going out there to see the education system, see what it's like. And if you come back here with the right ideas, just maybe, we might be able to do something about it.
The Haydays' concern is understandable. By European standards, British children do very badly at school.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to make sure that all your seatbelts are securely fastened.
It's been found that at 10, British pupils knew less about science than almost any others tested in 23 countries. They hovered above pupils in Nigeria and Ghana. At 13, it was better, but only just. British youngsters were on a par with those in Papua New Guinea.
There is a very good group, perhaps the top 20%, who perform well, but there is this recognisable tail who seem to be learning relatively little science.
Such findings come as no surprise to the Haydays, who actually had to move Danny from one junior school.
At my first school, I couldn't hardly read, I couldn't hardly write, and it was just a waste of time, really.
But international comparisons are very difficult. British parents wouldn't have too much to worry about if it was the only evidence against their children, but it isn't. After their early poor performance, many British youngsters give up the more difficult subjects or even school itself.
Some people, because they felt that they would be failures and didn't see the point of going to school because they knew when it came to exams they wouldn't pass anyway.
so they used to bunk off school.
The position becomes even worse for many youngsters after they leave school. Few in Britain get the sort of vocational education taken for granted elsewhere in Europe.
Much which is called vocational qualification in Britain would not be considered as a vocational qualification in Germany. The skills achieved in Germany are much higher, and in Britain you have some qualifications like bed making, room cleaning, and you get a certificate for this, and nobody in Germany would dream of to give a certificate just for this very narrow skill.
We really are failing our young people. It's quite frightening to see how much lower their standards that they're reaching are than the standards that young people in European countries are reaching.
Researchers say you can see these higher standards throughout Europe, and that everywhere too you can see the reason for them. Europe now provides appropriate education for all its young people, it said, not as in Britain, just for the few who go to university. To test this, we first took the Haydays to the Spanish resort of Mallorca.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mallorca. We hope you're going to enjoy your holiday while you're staying in the island of Mallorca itself, and we'd like to make your stay one of discovery and excitement.
Until comparatively recently, Spain was a very poor country. In 1970, wages here were only about half those in Britain. Education was also poor. 3/4 of the population had left school at 12, and many were illiterate. Today, everything is very different. Wages here on Mallorca, for instance, are now approaching those in Britain.
Before, when I've been on holiday, you just come for the sun. You don't think of the things behind what happened in the country.
We don't know too much about the Spanish people, but all we ever think of is one great big holiday resort. We never think of the people and the thing. Obviously, they've got to have education to be able to speak to us in English. I mean, because let's be honest, not most of us can't speak Spanish, and most of the Spanish can speak English. So obviously, they've got to be taught somewhere. So I just can't wait to see what it's like.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to school.
Thank you.
The following morning, we took the Haydays to one of the ordinary comprehensive schools on Mallorca that children go to until they're 14. The family's guide to Spanish education, Guillem Daviu, is a local English teacher.
They are 14, 15.
The school serves a poor area of Mallorca, but even here, the Haydays discovered the majority of pupils achieve more than they do in Britain.
You have to do about 8 subjects and to pass in all of them.
At around 14, about 70% of children here pass a range of subjects at a level not far off GCSE, the exam few British children do well in 2 years later.
Maths, chemistry, languages, physical education, this kind of school subjects. But you don't need to be a genius, just a pass mark is enough. You can get better marks, but a pass mark is enough for getting the graduate certificate. Probably you'd pass, Danny, I'm sure.
En la siguiente fila, ¿no?
Spanish youngsters are not only doing well at 14. More go on to higher education here than in Britain.
How are you? I'm okay, thanks.
Dos vasos de precipitados. ¿De acuerdo? En uno...
Spain succeeds where Britain fails, it's said, because it follows the European approach to education. These youngsters have to repeat a year if they're not considered ready for the following year's work, and they must pass in subjects like science or mathematics. But most importantly, the big shake-up comes not at 16, but at around 14. Until then, as in most European countries, children study the same subjects before branching off into different pathways.
They study general basic education up to 14 years. And here they split up. They get a graduate certificate, they have performed well, and they promote to higher secondary education. The other ones take normally a 2-year vocational technical training course.
To see how the system helps most youngsters, Guillem took the Haydays to the school which offers technical and vocational education. The pupils here are often those who've done less well academically, precisely those in Britain who do so badly.
They are second years of the 2-year vocational training course in technical drawing.
If they don't get a job and they don't pass, they can stay on a bit longer till they do pass the exam?
Yes, normally, yes.
Do you have to pass a special test if you want to work?
We have what we call continuous assessment. And so every month they are assessed a little bit in their subjects. If they don't pass, they are told, please work a little bit or more on that. So they don't have anxiety to pass an exam 1 day at an hour.
So there isn't as much pressure on the children?
Well, we put some every day. Every morning we want that they work.
But if they're assessed every month, they haven't got to take an exam once a year.
There is no exam anxiety, as far as I know. But they complain a little bit.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
The value of courses like these is such that some pupils who pass the graduate certificate at 14 and might have gone to a grammar school to pursue university entrance come here instead.
This is a workshop class. They study electronics.
And how many children are in this class?
Now, there are about 30 students, and they've got 2 teachers.
2 teachers?
Yes, because...
Why is that?
Because for workshop sessions, we need individual supervision. So one teacher couldn't cope with so many students.
And if I left, would I be a qualified electrician?
You'll be what we call it assistant electrician or something like that. Well, a kind of junior engineer or something like that. It's very difficult to find the proper British equivalent, but yes.
It would be like an apprenticeship in England, and then
no, a little more than an apprenticeship, because you have already a good
basic training.
But yes,
Very good. The education system is absolutely stripping us down to pieces. They can leave school at 16 and can literally go straight into electronics with a good knowledge of electronics straight away. In our schools, there's nothing like it. We're lucky to have 1 teacher, the way our school education system is going at the moment, and we've got 2. It is so frustrating. Our children are in an education system, and they are literally being strangled by an education system that just isn't working, and we come and sit, and in the first class, immediately, we see what the difference is. It is so frustrating.
More Spanish children do well at school than their British counterparts, and more go on to higher education. Yet the Spanish are worried about the 30% who fail at 14 and about those who later drop out of technical education. So they're spending £5 billion on improving technical and vocational courses. But whatever the present shortcomings, the Haydays were impressed.
I think it's very, very good. They don't seem to have the facilities in England for our children. If only we had those facilities, our children would be so much better.
I mean, we've only seen Spain today. What we see in Germany and what we see in France, I don't know what we're going to see, because they're supposed to be so much better.
Spain says it's determined to catch up with the rest of Europe. To find out how good the rest of Europe is at helping all youngsters succeed, World in Action took the Haydays to France to visit an area about 60 miles south of Paris, which exchanges pupils with the Haydays' own town of Basildon. The family wanted to see how Sarah, who did so badly in the British system, would have fared in France.
Ready? Take your hands out your pockets, you look really scruffy. Smile. Come then.
Here, as in Spain, Sarah would have gone to a comprehensive school up to the age of about 14. Then she would either have stayed there to pursue the French equivalent of GCSEs and A-levels, or moved to a technical school where she could prepare for work.
What do you do? I will show you the classes and the rooms where you see the pupils.
Thank you.
As Sarah always wanted to work in a bank, at 14 she might well have come here to the local technical school, where she would have been offered a variety of commercial courses.
Good morning.
I present you Mrs. Dubois, English teacher.
Welcome to Jeannette Verdi.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to show you the school, different classes.
Madame Dubois, first took the family to a class in accountancy.
How old would I actually be when I came to this school?
At 14 years.
14?
Yes.
Why would I come here? Why wouldn't I stay at Chalverdon? Why would I come to this school? How would it benefit
because
me?
You may come in this school for two reasons, you know. The first one is maybe because you've got some difficulties in a general school, so you come here. Or the other one is because you have, it's your choice, you know, to learn about professionals.
So the other schools, like a grammar school, if you want to go to university, you stay at that school. And
Yes.
This one, you branch off to go to work.
Yes. That's right. You understood. Yeah.
But in French schools, choosing vocational subjects like these is far from the dead end it is in Britain. After 2 or 3 years, most pupils here get a vocational diploma, but for many, it's only a beginning.
14.
If they pass their academic studies and get the BEP.
BEP. If they pass, they can get a job,
Yes.
or they can carry on their study.
And get the baccalaureate.
And get the baccalaureate.
And then go to university.
Yes, but for good pupils.
Yes.
Yes. If you're good in maths and French.
The reason choosing vocational subjects is not a dead end here is that French pupils have to pursue normal academic subjects alongside the vocational ones.
Yes, if you want to work in a bank, you have to study maths, French, and languages.
What?
You have to learn classical subjects, you know.
As well as
Yes,
learning,
as well as
secretarial.
Yes, of course.
Oh, because in England you sort of just, if you want to be a secretary, you study secretarial and maths and English.
And that's all?
Yeah, nothing.
No, really? Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised.
How many languages would she have to study?
I think one, only one. But it's better to learn two. English, it's better. Yeah.
But nearly all the pupils speak English, don't they? Quite well, compared to the English. We can't speak French.
Yes, I know.
We're lazy.
I think we try. Yes. I think now they like languages.
Yes. What time do they start classes in the morning?
They start at 8.
8 o'clock?
Yeah, 8 o'clock in the morning and till 6 in the evening.
6 in the evening?
Yeah, it's a long day.
We don't even work that long in England.
And it was terrible.
However long the hours, the system works. It may take some youngsters a year or two longer than others, but nevertheless, 80% end up well qualified. Staff here were astonished that at 16, Sarah had been able to get a good job in a city bank without what they considered a proper education. But however successful the French system, the French themselves are unhappy with it. Over the next 10 years, they plan to improve it so that 80% of all the youngsters here will reach A-level standard.
We've been to France for a day and we've seen the education in this school. I mean, if Sarah had been in this system, gone through this system of schooling, she would be 10 times brighter.
Because she would have done the typing, she would have learnt computers, she would have been advantaged to the bank as soon as she went to work.
I mean, in an English school, if Sarah wanted to do typing, she would have to drop French. Well, that's ridiculous. Because if you want to learn typing, you can't do French. That is no education system.
Sarah is a bright 16-year-old who should have done better at school than she did. But what does the European system offer youngsters like Danny, who, his parents fear, may not be as bright as Sarah? To find out what Europe would offer him, World in Action next flew the Haydays to Dortmund in Germany. Most secondary schools here specialize in providing academic, technical or vocational education. But there are an increasing number of comprehensives, like this one near Dortmund, which provide all three under one roof.
Good morning. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Jones.
Good morning.
Oh, then, please come in. Welcome to our school. Thank you.
Whichever school German youngsters go to, they will follow much the same sort of education until about 12 or 13, at which point they begin to follow different pathways. The Haydays guide to those pathways a senior mistress here and Trina Jones, a British teacher working in Germany.
We come from England and we want to see what the education system is like here, you know, because we've heard some good things about it. And as I say, Danny is 12 and he'll be 13 in June next year, and I just wonder what type of things they've got to offer him at this school.
Yes, yes. How good are you in school, Danny?
I'm not quite good.
You're not quite good, or you're...
Like medium.
You're medium. And have you decided already what you're going to do when you leave school?
Yes, I want to be a motor mechanic.
I see. Well,
About a third of German youngsters follow academic studies at school. Another third concentrate on technical courses, while the remainder, like these youngsters, follow basic vocational studies. If Danny lived in Germany, Trina Jones has told his parents he would probably be best off joining this group of pupils.
Danny wants to be a garage mechanic. He probably is very interested.
Although these youngsters are pursuing vocational education, they must also take basic academic subjects and succeed in them. It means if they want to, they can move to other types of education later on.
They don't mind them changing subjects.
No, if they find it possible, if they have the ability, the achievements, then it's all right.
So you're saying, what you're saying is if they're a late developer, they've still got opportunities
Right.
to be able to branch off again
Right.
into other branches of academic
Correct.
studies if they want to.
Yes, they really do. You can say that.
So if they wanted to, literally from here, once they branch forth, they can, if they want to go to university, they still can even afterwards.
Yes, that is one of our ideals here, and I think we can make it work.
Although only a few pupils from such courses go on to university, it is possible, and 90% of all youngsters leave school having succeeded in a broad range of subjects. But the Germans are still not satisfied.
Well, in a way, we are always going on to re-evaluate. Just at the moment, we are thinking that in some fields we could even do better.
You can imagine how we feel. We come to this school, we see the system, and we see an education system compared to ours that is working. You've got so many different routes to take that you can literally educate nearly every child. You can accommodate every child in the school. They'll branch off this way if they want to go technology, if they want to go academic, they can go that way. Anything they want to do, they can branch off. Us, we're locked in a system where you just go to university and they only cater for 14%, and that's it. So that makes 85% of our students failures immediately. Whereas you look at this school and you see every student has got a chance.
Das bedeutet, nach den entsprechenden Koordinaten setzen wir bestimmte Zündwinkel.
The German emphasis on academic success continues after school. Even if Danny did leave with just the basic leaving certificate, as a trainee garage mechanic, he would still have to pursue related academic studies for at least 3 years.
When you live in England and you come to Germany and see places like this, you can't believe it. The standard of education, the standard of training for young people. Take, for instance, me. I had a carpenter come to do some carpentry work in my daughter's bedroom. He comes in, he bangs in. The foundation of the work is banged in by 6-inch nails, and they came through my daughter's wall into my bedroom, and the points are sticking out in my bedroom. So you couldn't believe that anything like that could happen here. You really couldn't. The standard of workmanship I've seen here is really terrific.
It is tried in Germany to bring everybody, even the lowest achievers, up to a standard where he can become a skilled worker via an apprenticeship. But it is lacking in Britain that they don't care about the lower ability stream. They have quite good A levels, but everything below that is lacking.
3 recent studies by Britain's National Institute have revealed the price Britain pays for that educational failure. Productivity in British metalworking plants was shown to be 63% less than in German plants, and the reason, lack of technical expertise. It's the same story in the kitchen furniture industry. The Germans produce such high-quality kitchens, British companies have retreated from this end of the market, and German exports, negligible 20 years ago, now account for nearly a third of British sales. And the main reason, not better machinery, but better education. Almost all German shop floor workers are well qualified. In Britain, some companies visited had no properly qualified workers at all. Wherever the National Institute looked, they found the same story, even in women's fashions. The German industry has gone upmarket and makes high-quality dresses the rest of Europe want to buy. The Germans now earn twice as much from exports as the British. The reason, yet again, education. "80% of German machinists are well qualified. No British company visited could point to one machinist with similar qualifications. The German success, here as everywhere, has brought wages up to twice those in Britain for shorter hours.
It's very evident that a skilled workforce means that you can produce a quite different product and a much more valuable product which you can export in large quantities, and we just don't seem to have the skilled workforce that can produce this sort of product.
My fear for Britain is that you don't have the probably trained and skilled workforce to produce more valuable products to pay for the higher wages. This starts in the schools, and I think this is the root of your problem.
If the people in England could come out here and see what we've seen, they would be amazed.
When we arrived in Spain, and after seeing the school system there, I was angry. From Spain we went to France, and after seeing the school system there, I was angry. And then we come to Germany and I see the school system there, and I go from anger to deep depression.
Well, I don't think there are any opportunities at all for Danny in England. I think there could be so much success for him if he was living in Germany. I'm just heartbroken as a mother. I'm very angry and, as my husband said, very depressed.
Something's got to be done, and very, very soon, as our children will be known as second-class citizens. They'll have no training, no technology, no languages, nothing. All they've got left for them is this. When they have their children, they'll have the same depression as what we've got. My heart aches for them.